for you, what is technology and how has our approach to it changed in the last centuries?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so technology is a part of humanity, and it always has been. After the, revelations of Darwin and Watson and Crick, where we discovered that we were biologically really not any different from a mouse and are essentially identical to other great apes, the question naturally arose, what is it that makes our species different? It's not really biology. And I think it's a question that we're still wrestling with. I would argue that one of the things that might make this species different, if that's even an interesting question, quite frankly, is technology. And what is that? And in a way, they are means of minimizing effort or work. Energetic, informational, temporal. And they've been around for as long as we have any evidence of human settlement. And whether you call the technology an arrowhead or a petroglyph, evidence of fire, of funerary customs, there are means in which, or by which, we have mobilized society to solve problems efficiently that would be very difficult for us to solve on our own. And I think they must have come as a shock to every society that was introduced to them. I always talk about the incredible revolution in writing in the Fertile Crescent, the Sumerian clay tablets. There's been a lot of talk about the singularity, a consequence of miniaturization in silicon chips, that at some point the memory capacity and the processing speed will be sufficient for human beings or some other organism to create a simulacrum of themselves in a computer. But humans already did that in Sumeria in the 3rd millennium BC, when they inscribed their thoughts in clay, in cuneiform, using a reed. There was some version of you, some dilute version of you, in a physical artifact. It wasn't all of you, but there never will be all of you, because even a downloaded version of your mind would lose your physical body. So I call that the first singularity. And it wasn't a singularity that came from the silicon chip. It came from the silicate chip, the clay chip. And history has been, in some sense, a whole series of inventions that have allowed us to create or deposit versions of ourselves. Think about novels. Think about the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is a distillation of emotional, moral, ethical ideas that society was obsessing over. And for people to have access to those ideas in distilled form must have been revolutionary. There's been a huge amount of discussion, and Plato discussed it at length, about the merits and demerits of writing, because writing and outsourcing memory to physical artifacts would detract from the human need to cultivate memory and recall, and that this would undermine society because we'd become indolent. And so throughout history, over and over and over again, we have been confronting ourselves with means of minimizing our effort and enhancing our capabilities, which in the most generic sense, I think, is what we mean by technology. Is the technology that we have now qualitatively different from the technology of, for example, the steam engine in the Industrial Revolution? And I think that's a very difficult question to answer, honestly. I think what is different is the number of human beings on the planet, right? And to the extent that human ingenuity scales non-linearly in the number of people, there are returns to scale, then it's possible that the rate at which we develop new technologies might be vastly faster than they were in previous centuries. I think that is a difference because we see it with our own eyes. I mean, over the course of our lifetimes, we've seen companies emerge and disappear over the course of a few years. Think about Research in Motion, the BlackBerry. I mean, that was such an extraordinary invention, and now it's gone, you know. And we could say that about many, many things. Kodak would have been an earlier example, and so on. MySpace would have been a later one. I think that's different. And if you had traveled back to the 18th century or the 19th century, people would still be using ink and fountain pens, and that would be true for hundreds of years. So I don't know if it's the quality of the technology, although we should get to computing, which might be different, but rather the rate at which new technologies emerge and how we cope with the speed of exposure. I feel that might be different. And I think the evidence suggests that it is.